Well, welcome everybody. Today, the topic is adventure. If our life is our only adventure, what are we waiting for? To answer that question, I ask you a question. What's missing? How do we find it? And above all, how can we enjoy our adventure? Quote, "One way to get the most out of life is to look upon it as an adventure." William Feather. See, every one of our lives tells a story, a great story, an excellent story. And we spend the first part of our lives trying to build our story. And then we spend the final part of our lives resetting that legacy just so it'll be what we really want people to think it was. And try to flesh out that story. See, our lives have to make sense to us. We look for purpose. Now, Aristotle, about 2,000 years ago, figured this out, and he said, quote, "A good man must not be seen passing from happiness to misery, and a bad man from misery to happiness." See, storylines have to make sense to us, according to our understanding of what we believe is right or wrong. See, we want our lives to make sense. We want our lives to make sense to us and to the people around us. Quote, "Adventure is not outside man, it's within." George Eliot. See, every one of our lives is an adventure, and each of those lives, each of those adventures is amazing. You're amazing. If we could pull the highlight reel from our lives and string them together in some kind of coherent narrative, it would be a show worth remembering. Your life is a show worth remembering. Live your adventure. Hebrews 6:10 from The Voice says, because God is not unjust or unfair, He won't overlook the work you've done or the love you've carried into each other in His name while doing His work, as you are still doing. See, God remembers everything we do. The story of our journey through life should be and will be and is unforgettable. The narrative of our life. One of my grandmothers was living in a North Texas nursing home. And my wife and I drove up there to visit her one time, and we took her to her favorite buffet that caters to people of her era. And we had a delightful visit with her. And we got back to her room and were preparing to leave. She reached aside on this side table, and it was stacked with these albums. And she just pulled the one off the top and handed it to us. And when I opened it, I noticed that she had mixed up all of her pictures from her life randomly in these albums. Each album was a mixture of pictures. There was no organization to it at all. And there was people in there, I didn't know who they were, the ones she handed me. I didn't have a clue. Some of them were 70 years old. And but she was giving us a random view of her life and the people she loved. Now, this grandma, who we called Mama, she actually moved across Texas when she was a child in a covered wagon. And she'd worked as a cotton picker. She got married, she had children and some incredible amount of grandchildren. And she retired from Levi Strauss factory as a manager, working there. And she had quite a story, this woman. And but the photo album she'd given us, or she called it this picture book, was an indiscriminate snapshot of her life. And we were tasked unspokenly to make sense of this. And she assumed we would talk about the pictures with other family members and try to find the people that best connected with those pictures. sort of a reverse scavenger hunt. And she hoped that we would reset and retell her legacy. You know, she passed soon after she handed out those albums. And because we humans love a good storyline, you know, she knew that we would be inclined to make sense of her life. Everybody's life makes sense. You know, quote, every man can transform the world from one of monotony and drabness to one of excitement and adventure. Irving Wallace. I mean, what do you want your life to be? Exciting. I want mine to be an adventure. You know, I know you do too. 1 Thessalonians 1:2-5 from the Message says, every time we think of you, we thank God for you. Day and night you're in our prayers as we call to mind your work of faith, your labor of love, and your patience of hope in following our Master, Jesus Christ, before God our Father. It is clear to us, friends, that God not only loves you very much, but also has put his hand on you for something special. When the message we preached came to you, it wasn't just words. Something happened in you. The Holy Spirit put steel in your conviction. See, you're loved. Your life has and is necessary. You will be remembered. You know, and we love being a part of your adventure. So what are we missing? Is it like the question I posed earlier? Are we even aware that some things are missing from our lives? I think yes. If we don't have everything that's been promised us, something's missing. Something's missing. You know, if we don't have our need met, there just might be a piece of that puzzle that's gone unnoticed. You ever put together one of those jigsaw puzzles? Like 1,000 pieces, and then you can't find the last couple, and you're looking between the cushions and, you know, on the floor, and, you know, and then you find the cat sort of batted away next to a plant. I mean, you look for that piece because you can't stand that puzzle without a piece in there, right? With one missing. My mom used to try to draw it. She was a pretty good artist, but it never looked quite right. She'd cut it out just right and draw that piece and paint it. But it still never looked right. Our minds want every piece in the puzzle to fit. Yet so many times they don't. And the world trains us just to accept it. A few years back, the Washington Post conducted a social experiment to show that as we get locked into a rigid routine of adult life, that our childlike curiosity gets crowded out, which limits our adventure. And you've probably heard about this before. See, researchers asked this world-renowned classical musician named Joshua Bell to take out his violin and play his amazing music during rush hour in the Washington Metro subway. And he brought with him a $3.5 million violin that had been handcrafted in 1713 by Antonio Stradivari. And they wanted to see what would happen and how people would react to this world-famous musician just playing in a subway. And the results shocked everybody. And Joshua picked a spot at the top of an escalator near a blank wall, and some exit doors were just right next to him. And he donned a Washington Nationals baseball cap, and he threw a few of his own dollars into his open violin case just as seed money, because that's what they do. And he began to play. And for the next 43 minutes, he played six classical pieces and was passed by 1,097 people. Regardless of race, profession, or economic model, he went basically unnoticed. Almost everyone maintained their daily routine, their isolated stare, and continued off to work. And to the shock of the reporter, there was one demographic, one segment of society in whom every single one of them turned their heads and gave him their full attention. Only one group. And this one group, oblivious of the moving press of people, they could care less where all these focused adults were going. They either stopped in mid-stride or they just craned their necks to watch and listen until they were out of earshot. The group was children. And every single child tried to stop, watch, and listen. But sadly, every child was whisked away by their parents, who was in a hurry to get off to work and drop them off at the daycare. To the parents, Joshua Bell was nothing more than a street musician. But to the children, he was flat out amazing. The children didn't need to be told that he was amazing. See, Joshua Bell earned $32.17 that day for his 43-minute impromptu recital. And at concerts, Joshua Bell usually commands $1,000 a minute. And, quote, the poet Billy Collins once laughingly observed that all babies are born with a knowledge of poetry because of the lub-dub of the mother's heart as in iambic meter. And then Collins said, life slowly starts to choke the poetry out of us. It may be true with music too. You know, what has a young child got that we have suppressed, that we've kept down, that's slowing down all the adventure that we're designed to have and the blessings that are designed to be ours? What have we blindly overlooked? You know, if the adults had only been told, if there had only been a marquee, if someone had only made a vinyl sign with big red letters, Joshua Bell, famous, violinist, please stop and watch. You know, if only someone had sent us a blog, an Evite. You see, if somebody had just thought ahead to tell a DJ to announce it on the local radio station. Or if somebody could have just posted it on Facebook, it would have gone viral. This guy's world famous. If you had known he was in your subway, wouldn't you have just gone a few minutes early to watch? Sure. He did a free concert in that subway station that day. Don't you think more people would have paid attention? You know, we adults would have paid more attention if people had just told us that it was important. They just should have just told us it was important. Kids don't need to be told. They don't need to be told who to like and who not to like. Quote, security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Helen Keller. Helen Keller! Life is either a daring adventure or it's nothing. Where's my adventure? Plus, I want to be part of your adventure. Sometimes yours is better than mine. Sometimes mine's better than yours. What's become of our childish sense of adventure? The rejection of that inborn curiosity has been blinded to us in many ways. And it's also we've been blinded to the many treasures that are out there for us. If everything in the universe has been supplied, if all our need has been supplied by things in this whole universe, what should we be missing? The answer should be nothing. So why don't we see it? Because we're not told to see it. No one told us to see it. Nobody sent us that memo, that fax, that text, that tweet. What's become of our childish sense of adventure? Matthew 18, 1 through 5 from the Message. At about the same time, the disciples came to Jesus asking, "Who gets the highest rank in God's kingdom?" For an answer, Jesus called over a child. "Come here, kid." And said, "I'm telling you once and for all that unless you return to square one and start over like children, you're not even going to get a look at the kingdom, let alone get in. Whoever becomes simple and elemental again, like this child, will rank high in God's kingdom. What's more, when you receive the childlike on my account, it's the same as receiving me." There's a lot in those verses there. If you'll notice, the kingdom is more of a mindset than a place. What's your kingdom? Where are you going? What are we seeking? What are we doing? What are we looking for? See, a child gets it because he stays curious. Aren't children just naturally curious? I mean, they're picking up a handful of dirt and sifting through it. I remember I was at a football game one time with my son, and my daughter was playing in the field, and it was cold outside. And she comes walking up to us with two big handfuls of worms. Just huge, hundreds and hundreds of worms. Most kids don't want to touch it, but little kids, they don't care. Because it just felt icky and movie and funny. Kids they're just curious. They seem to find fun no matter who's watching. I was recently at the airport, and there was two kids just chasing each other around a set of chairs. And there's people sitting there trying to text or whatever. They didn't care. They just kept running and running and laughing and laughing and laughing and looking out the window and running another set of chairs, annoying people. They didn't care. It was fun to them. See, even kids in war-torn countries seem to seek out and find moments of pure joy. What about when our life becomes war-torn? We adults, we start internalizing it. When we're thinking something's wrong with us or something's wrong with the world, instead of just looking for those moments of joy, those gems of joy. They're there. They have to be, or life would be miserable. Quote, "Knowledge is an unending adventure at the edge of uncertainty." Jacob Bronowski. At the edge of uncertainty. See, we too are going to find the entry into that kingdom, that special place Jesus was talking about, as we pay attention and look at our life through the eyes of a child. Don't think of the kingdom of something someday. Think of finding it right now. It's right now for you, folks. You got the keys to the kingdom. What are we waiting for? It's wild. Jesus was talking about, as we pay attention to and look at our life through the eyes of a child, no matter who's watching, we're going to find what we need. We just have to simplify a little bit, folks. We make life so complex. Our therapists give us all these things to do and think about. It's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you just got to bring it back down to the base level. What are we really looking for? Sometimes the more you think about problems, the more you see problems. Start looking for those gems out there. They're there. You got the keys. See, children allow curiosity to fuel their adventure, which is in turn their treasure. The adventure is the treasure. You know, I read an article by a psychiatrist the other day, and he opened his study, and this is what got me curious. He said, "We should expect a miracle every 35 days." And I thought, where did he pull that number out of? You know, where does that come from? And so but it intrigued me, so I kept reading his article. And then later in the article, he said, "Just kidding," because he doesn't believe in miracles. And then I was not so curious about that article any longer. Because I believe life is full of miracles. I believe life is a miracle. How do we find it? How do we find our adventure? How do we find our treasure? How do we find our miracle? How do we find direction in our adventure? See, as we mature, we lose or we begin to reappoint that energy that was once childlike curiosity to just routine, because we're comfortable with routine. And we begin to lose out. We start missing things. We don't notice things. We drive the same road in the same car, talk to the same people, go to the same places. Remember that study I was talking about? Basically, the basic American, he frequents 5 places. Their life revolves around 5 places. You go to the same store, you go to the same gym, you go to the same job, and then you do a couple other things. Go visit the same friend or family. I mean, and just think it's sad. And we think we're free peoples. 5 places. And I think it's like a 10-mile radius. I mean, we live in a 10-mile radius. Some expand a little bit more because of work, but it's craziness. And we think we're curious. We think our life is an adventure because we go on a vacation once a year. Make every day a vacation. Look for something cool every day. Notice something different. Walk a different way. Walk up the stairs instead of taking an escalator. Do something different. Take on a new sport. You know, do something different. I started running different trails recently. I loved the one I was on, but they shut it down because of security concerns on the Air Force Academy. So I've chosen other things. Now it's like, oh, this is fun. It's different people. Different dogs want to sniff me. You know, everything's different. I see different animals. You know, different foliage. It's fun. It's different. I get to talk to different people. And you know, how do we go about finding our treasure? How do we go about finding our adventure? Our true reason for being, if we've lost that roadmap called curiosity. Luke 12:34 says, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." What's your treasure? Treasure's your thoughts. It's the good thoughts. It's the thoughts that just keep building and adding. They start a chain reaction, a domino effect of blessings. You've done that when you're a kid. Set up all the dominoes and till it gets to the end and it knocks a ball off the table or does something. You know, I mean, the domino, I mean, that's what it does. We want to start these domino chains of action in our lives, but it starts with thinking those thoughts that are golden, good thoughts. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's you, your heart. It's the real you. Don't you want the real you to shine? Sure. See, this treasure is that childlike manner of thinking and expectation. How do we get back to the garden? How do we unlock our childhood learning ability? When I lived in Japan on an Air Force base, most everybody had Japanese maids because they didn't cost very much in the 60s. And I noticed that all my friends who had brothers or sisters that were under 5, in less than a year's time, those kids were fluent in Japanese. But none of us learned anything except for cuss words and things that would make each other laugh. And, but because they're just curious, they're hanging on, they're learning, they're grabbing. I had other things to do. I wanted to go earn money so I could go to the movies. Or I'd sneak off base and go do things I probably wasn't supposed to do. You know, I mean, it was fun. That was a different adventure, but these kids were just absorbing it. They're designed to. Why does it stop? What stops us? Sometimes it's routine. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's boredom, uncertainty. I mean, what is it that stops us from doing anything? You know, how do we get back to that garden of childhood? Quote, adventure is just bad planning. Ronald Amundsen. And, you know, I think, you know, like to explain that, you know, like those adults in the subway, we can plan the adventure right out of our lives. So just routine's good. I mean, we need routine, but it can also limit you. And I'll get to a couple of good quotes in a few minutes, but have you ever learned a new word and then you begin to see that word everywhere? Isn't that, it's amazing. And then you begin to wonder, is this a strange coincidence, or have I just been thought blind my entire life? I mean, why did I not ever see that word before, and now I see it all the time? And I think, how many blanks are there in my life that should be full with something? I knew a kid when I was 17. I was hitchhiking to Austin, Texas. We were doing this barefoot. We were going to go see ZZ Top. And there was this other kid, and Santana was the opening band. And so we were hitchhiking down there, and I met this kid along the way, and I asked him his name and asked him where he went to school. He said, well, I graduated, but he said, I want to let you know that I never learned how to read. Now, how do you graduate high school and never learn to read? And I remember, even as stupid as I was at 17, I thought, how much are you missing in life if you can't read? You don't even know what that sign says. How do you know? I couldn't fathom it. Yet there was generations of people that couldn't read. Josephine used to help adults learn to read. And they were so thankful, you know, when they could help their kids with homework or do something or learn. It opened a world to them. Well, just like learning to read, there's little things that we haven't been able to read, not read on the page, we don't notice, that would add to our life. Now, this marvel is called the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. You will hear that term again in the next few weeks. The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. And understanding this unique human trait is going to help us find, or potentially help us find, what we have been missing. And this is going to help us make sense of the senseless. You know, when I was 16, I bought a race-worn 55 Chevy. And I thought I was the only one in town to drive such a classic beauty. And when I started driving it around Fort Worth, you know, I saw these 55 Chevys everywhere. They were everywhere. And I thought, what? Where did all these cars come from? I never ever saw one before, except for in movies. And I thought, what was happening? It really perplexed me. And what I had was a simple case of the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. You know, this frequency illusion. See, it's once you become aware of something new, we begin to see it everywhere. Once you become aware of a new word, you begin to hear it and read it everywhere. How many things are there like that? That if we just got started on that, it's going to lead to a chain of knowledge another way. See, the human brain likes patterns. In fact, it loves patterns. And our brain works by noticing and analyzing patterns. And once we learn about a pattern, a new word, a car, or any new thing, our brain begins to notice it more often. Your brain basically says, I'm going to start looking for that thing without you having to ever think about it. You know, that's your brain talking to you. You know, you don't even think about it, but all of a sudden it's pop, pop, pop. You start seeing the cars. You start noticing it. How many things are there really out there for us to notice? And what if you love spiritual things, what about that? When's the last time you asked God to show you something? Miraculous. You know, when we begin to set up a new pattern, we're going to understand this frequency illusion, and things are going to begin to happen. Now, this name, Baader-Meinhof, Baader-Meinhof was actually a terrorist group in Germany in the 70s, and a guy in the 90s. I wouldn't call it a bloggist, but he was on a chat board, and he noticed this, he heard that term. And then within 24 hours, he heard it again and again, and he went, what is this? So he coined it. It's the Baader-Meinhof effect. It has nothing to do with the terrorist group Baader-Meinhof. It just described the frequency effect there. And what's cool is this pattern, it starts moving in our brain once you get those good thoughts there, and it's going to tie to some other good thought that's similar. So the more thoughts that you put in there, more treasures you plant in your mind, the more good seeds that you plant within yourself, the more it's going to open up doors to understand other things. The domino effect. In order to grow, we have to begin by starting a new pattern. Without a new pattern, there's no growth. We do this by reading a new book, watching a different show, driving a different way to work, eating at a new restaurant. We get into an engaging conversation with a complete stranger. Somebody asked me the other day how I round up clients for my business. And I said, I talk to people. I talk to them when I'm going through a line at the supermarket. I talk to them when I'm running. I talk to people everywhere I go about just random different things. And then some of them want to be my clients. You know, so it's wild, but you start that pattern. Some people don't even know that they want what you have to offer until you tell them. Isn't that the beauty of advertising? You know, and this new pattern's going to naturally begin to unlock hidden treasure. If everything we're going to ever need has already been supplied, then why aren't we finding it at times? Where's the disconnect? Ephesians chapter 2, 1 through 3, message. It wasn't so long ago that you were mired in that old, stagnant life of sin. You let the world, which doesn't know the first thing about living, tell you how to live. You filled your lungs with polluted unbelief and then exhaled disobedience. We all did it. All of us doing what we felt like doing, when we felt like doing it, all of us in the same boat. See, we're trained to go with the flow, to walk in lockstep behind the people, behind society. You see, quote, adventure should be 80%. I think this is manageable. But it's good to have that last 20% where you're right outside your comfort zone. Still safe, but outside your comfort zone. Bear Grylls. Without being at the edge of your comfort zone, there's no adventure. There's no adventure. A man named Walter Dill Scott published a book on advertising in 1903 called The Theory and Practice of Advertising. And his experiments in advertising, which there hadn't been many before that, his experience in advertising revealed that people were highly suggestible and obedient. Walter Dill Scott said, quote, man has been called the reasoning animal, but he could, with greater truthfulness, be called the creature of suggestion. He is reasonable, but he is to a greater extent suggestible. End of quote. Madison Avenue. You know, I mean, so, you know, that's how advertising thinks of us. Putty in their hands. That's how we're manipulated by the world. Because people are basically obedient and gullible. Unfortunately, it's the way of humanity. You think an authority figure's right. Because he has more stars or more stripes or, you know, more whatever. Shinier name tag. Brighter tie, bigger hair, you know, shinier suit, you know, whatever it is. More girlfriends, more boyfriends, you know, whatever it is. More popular on the movies. And so we just follow and we buy, we do what they do. You smoke what they smoke, you drink what they drink, you watch what they watch, you buy the kind of computer that they use if they're your age. Romans 12:2 from The Voice. Don't allow this world to mold you into its own image. Instead, be transformed from the inside out by renewing your mind. As a result, you will be able to discern what God wills and whatever God finds good, pleasing, and complete. This is the renewed mind. It's putting those new thoughts in your mind. And then you will be able to find what God wants you to find. That's what it just said. That's a renewed mind. Isn't that cool? This inbred ability to be manipulated and herded must be fought if we're ever going to grow and have our eyes open enough for us to find our prize. An example I've used before, I remember working in a stockyard in Nebraska. And they just herded these cattle in from a stockyard into a smaller and smaller fenced area to where they're just walking one by one, you know, right to their slaughter. It was sort of sad to watch. And you got the cowboys prodding them along and stuff. And I remember seeing this one cow, not a bull, a cow, said, I don't like this, in cow talk. And it jumped over a 6-foot fence trying to escape. From standing, it jumped over the fence. I didn't think a cow could jump over a 6-foot fence. But I guess when you're scared or you don't want to be on this side, you know, you can do crazy, amazing things. What crazy, amazing thing do you want to do? What fence do you need to jump? Starts with thoughts. The course of this world is even more sinister if people choose to allow themselves to be manipulated by religion. Now, I know there's a place for religion, but there is a big manipulation in it as well, because truth is really designed to set you free. It's not designed to control and corral you. And, look at these once fringe groups you didn't even hear about 5 years ago, and now they've amassed incredible finances and a following, and they're taking over sectors of the world. All started with one thought, one word, one seed planted, one religious seed. If you don't think my way, you're wrong. Look at the crazy stuff people do. You see, advertising is simply planting seeds in people's heads, which will in turn make a pattern which ends in action, of which they want them to purchase something. God just puts words in our mind as we read the Word, as we talk to one another, that's going to help us find our purchase, find our gold, find our treasure, find our whatever you need. Matthew 23:15. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye compass the sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, you make him twofold more the child of hell than yourself. Don't you think these leaders in ISIS are trying to make their converts even more vicious than they are? Sure they are. Jesus Christ was talking to the religious leaders of Israel here. They scour the globe trying to find somebody they can manipulate and train to do what they want them to do even better than they could do it. All starts with a couple of thoughts. How can we swim against this raging flood? I remember being on the Jersey Shore a couple of years ago. And I'd never really been in the ocean much. I've been in the Gulf, which isn't much anything. I've been in the water off of Japan, which is very shallow for a long period of time. But this Jersey Shore had waves coming in. They were crashing in. And so I saw kids out there playing and enjoying it. Well, I walked in, this wave hit me, and I started tumbling underwater like this, like a cartwheel. And by the time I could stand up when the wave was past, my shorts were just barely on, and all my pockets were totally full of sand, and I was scratched up. That's what we have to swim against. Now, the kids who live on the Jersey Shore, they understand you dive under, they know how to work the waves, but I didn't know. It just slammed me down, turned me around, filled my pockets with dirt. That's the world. Instead of a pockets of gold, it's just pockets of junk that you got to dump out. See, swim against the tide. You see, we can, we will, we do. Quote, each child is an adventure into a better life, an opportunity to change the old pattern and make it new. Hubert Humphrey. See, this renewed mind is planting seeds that begin to set a pattern, and your mind will start trying to make that pattern happen. It's just the way God designed humanity. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, spiritually. It'll happen. You start thinking about spiritual things and miracles and great stuff, pretty soon you're going to start seeing it because it's all around. You start thinking about abundance. You get one good thought, it's like, wow, that's a great thought. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 now I've seen it 3 times in 2 days. Love it. People call it the law of attraction. It's just the way God designed humanity. There's nothing new. It's any man of God, of any ilk, of any religion, understands this stuff. The renewed mind plants the seeds and starts that pattern. Choose what you put into your head. Like I've told you before, I had a boss one time when I was a machinist, when he wanted the work to be very accurate. Some days he would play classical music, other days he played hard rock. And so I asked him why one time. He said, when I want accuracy, I play classical. It works. He said, but when I want production, I play rock, when I don't care about the accuracy as much. And I thought, gosh, I didn't realize we were that easily manipulated. Yet we are. We are. So choose how you're going to be manipulated, to the good or to the bad. It's your choice. You're always getting manipulated by somebody, something. It's always happening. That's the course of this world. 2 Corinthians 2, 4 through 7 from the Message. If you only look at us, you might as well miss the brightness. We carry this precious message around in the unadorned clay pots of our ordinary lives. And that's to prevent anyone from confusing God's incomparable power with us. That, as it is, there's not much chance of that. You know for yourselves that we're not much to look at. We've been surrounded and battered by troubles, but we're not demoralized. We're not sure what to do, but we know that God knows what to do. We've been spiritually terrorized, but God hasn't left our side. We've been thrown around. We've been thrown down, but we haven't broken. What they did to Jesus, they'll do to us. Trial and torture, mockery and murder. What Jesus did among them, he does in us. He lives. Our lives are at a constant risk for Jesus' sake, which makes Jesus' life all the more evident in us. While we're going through the worst, you're getting in on the best. Even a bad time can be an opportunity to learn. Look for gold in the bad times. In the raging floods of controversy, look for the nuggets of gold, of opportunity. What a great attitude. And this is more than the gift of Holy Spirit here. This is attitude. The gift of Holy Spirit does a person no good unless they have the attitude that wants to engage it, to move it. You're in control of it. It's not in control of you. See, this is a proposed mindset to grow into the people we were designed to be so we can have and be who we were designed to have and be. See, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? If our life is our only adventure, what are we waiting for? Every one of our lives is an adventure, and each of you are equally amazing. If we could pull the highlight reel of our life and string them together in some kind of cohesive narrative, it would be a show worth watching and worth remembering for all of us. God remembers you. We remember each other, and we keep it alive. See, few adults took notice of the amazing Joshua Bell playing brilliantly in that subway that day because nobody told him. Nobody told him to. You see, but each and every child noticed. Each and every child noticed. When it comes to discovery, be the child. Begin to notice what most adults miss. Quote, men of age object too much, consult too much, adventure too little, repent too soon, and seldom drive business home to the full period, but content themselves with the mediocrity of success. Dale Carnegie. See, be aware of your surroundings and allow that Baader-Meinhof phenomenon to become your norm. Change your routine. Be aware of your surroundings. Begin new patterns of thought and experience. Open your eyes and find your treasure. Now, go out and enjoy your adventure. God bless.